Ready? Chairman Rourke?
Here.
Councilor Elliott?
Here.
Councilor Chow?
Here.
3 present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We're here today, this afternoon, for the Elections Subcommittee meeting based off a motion from Mayor Leahy. And with that, Mr. Mayor, you want to give a couple brief words, and then we'll get to Attorney Valisio?
Thank you. Yeah, the motion basically speaks for itself. I think Attorney Veloci got the gist of the motion, so we just wanted to make sure that as people pull papers and people who are voting understand what's happening this year, just to make sure that we're all on the same page with how to run for your district, how to run at large, and what the overall election season should look like. So I think that's pretty much what you're going to do, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And through you to the subcommittee, thank you for having me. Before I go into the nomination paper process, I just want to briefly go over again for the subcommittee and members of the public how the municipal elections are going to proceed for 2021. So again, the city has adopted a hybrid electoral system in which certain seats will be district-based and certain seats will be at-large. So for purposes of the city council, the city has been divided into 8 municipal districts. And the number of city councilors for the 2021 election will be increased from 9 to 11. So for these 8 municipal districts, 1 city councilor for each of these 8 districts will represent the district. And if you are a candidate, you can run, if you're running for city council, you can either run for a particular district if you reside in that district, or you can run at large for the remaining 3 seats that are at large. For the school committee races, the current number of school committee members is 6. That will remain the same for the municipal elections in 2021. However, 4 of those school committee seats will represent districts, and those districts shall be formed by combining 2 of the city council districts into 1 to represent the school committee seat. So in this instance, just by way of example, one of the school committee seats will be formed by combining City Council District 1 and 8. Another school committee seat will be formed by combining City Council Districts 4 and 2. Same with combining City Council Districts 3 and 5. And finally, for combining City Council Districts 6 and 7. And colored maps of these, what this is going to look like for both City Council and School Committee are available on the city's website and in the nomination paper packets, which I will get into shortly. So that is essentially what the system is going to look like. Now, as of June 1st, yesterday, nomination papers have been released. So candidates who are interested in running for either City Council or School Committee can pull papers. The way the process works is that if you are a candidate that's interested in running and seeking the nomination for any of these positions, your first step is to come to the elections office, and we have a paper log. So all candidates have to publicly indicate on this paper log what they are running for. So they need to provide their full name, the position they're running for, whether it's city council or school committee, and if they are running for that position, whether it's at large or district-based. And if it's district-based, they need to indicate the district number they're running for. And this is a requirement. You have to indicate what race you're running for before you pull papers, because we certainly don't want a situation where a candidate pulls papers saying they're running for something only to change their mind and then submit it under another guise. So again, if you wish to run for a particular office, you have to announce and indicate on the log what you're running for. Additionally, the log, the candidate has to indicate the date in which they pull papers. They also have to provide their address, their phone number, and their email address. And the reason we ask that they provide their email address is that the Massachusetts Office of Campaign Finance has indicated that they will be contacting candidates through email instead of phone due to COVID. Now, some questions have come up regarding what qualifications a candidate needs in order to potentially run for office. So to go over the requirements again, first, anyone who wishes to run for office has to be 18 years or older. Second, they have to be a registered voter in the city of Lowell. And third, they have to be a resident of the city of Lowell. And to be a resident of the city of Lowell, that is based on objective evidence, meaning that just because someone thinks that they are a resident of the city of Lowell doesn't mean they're a resident of the city of Lowell. It depends on what the objective evidence stands for. And again, in order to register to vote, one has to be a resident of the place they are registering at. So those are the requirements for anyone who wants to run for office. Additionally, if you are running for a district office, either city council or school committee, you also have to have been a resident of that district for at least a year prior to the election. So, and this is one of the conditions under the federal consent decree. So if you are not a resident of your district a year prior to the date of the election, you can't run for the district seat. You could run at large if you wish. So those are the requirements for candidates. So once a candidate fills out their the nomination paper log, we provide them with a nomination paper packet. And for the convenience of the subcommittee, I provided one as an example, just so you and members of the public can see what's inside. So in the nomination paper packet, we have provided not only the papers themselves, but also some educational materials for all candidates. So they can familiarize themselves with the new electoral system in 2021, as well as some friendly advice as to how to gather signatures. So the first thing you'll see is the statement of candidate right here. So it's a similar format to statements of candidates that we've used in previous elections. Candidates are required to completely fill out the entire page indicating their name, the address in which they reside and are registered to vote at, and indicate the office they are running for. And we've expanded this so that not only do you indicate the office you run for, either city council or school committee, you also have to indicate on your nomination papers whether it's at large or district, and if it's district-based, what the numbered district you're running for. Additionally, at least one of the nomination papers that the candidate submits has to be notarized. They can be notarized at the city clerk's office or at another notary in the city of Lowell, but that is also a hard and fast requirement. Additionally, all candidates have to be advised that you are filling out and signing these nomination papers under oath. So by doing so, you are attesting and swearing to that the information that you are indicating on this nomination paper is true and accurate. Under oath, so help you God. If it is found that you have provided false information, this is a state and also federal offense, and there could be repercussions. So again, I'm just making that clear for the record.
So,
Yes, go ahead.
quickly, so before we go on, I know the mayor had a question, I had a quick question, but we are joined by Councilor Conway, Councilor Drinkwater, Councilor Mercier, and Mayor Leahy. So with regards to the 1 year residency requirement in that district, how does the elections office go about making sure that's correct or truthful?
What we do is we would have to check the evidence that is on record. So one of the things we do is we would check voting records. When we receive papers from a candidate, we pull out their voter registration information and we check the voter registration information to see that they're registered to vote at an address, and we would also check to see that that address is within the district. To the extent we find any additional evidence indicating that they don't live at that district, we would
Reach out?
we would bring it to the candidate's attention, and if worse comes to worse, we would have to either challenge it or bring it to the attention of the election commission.
All right, thank you. Mayor Leahy?
Thank you. So just in theory, can someone pull papers for school committee and pull papers for city council and determine during the summer which seat they want to engage in?
I would say no, and the reason I would say that is obviously one can only run for one position. And certainly if a candidate is, say, pulling papers for one position and they feel that there's not enough public interest or people may not support them in that position, they can certainly come back to the elections office and say, you know what, this isn't really working out. I'd like to try to pull papers for another position. They're more than welcome to do so. We would simply cross out that line and add a new provision allowing them to pull papers for that new position. The reason I would say no, because we don't want a situation where people are running for multiple positions at the same time, especially when you are attesting under oath in these statements of candidates that this is the position you're running for. If people who are reviewing these papers are signing them under the belief and understanding that they are running for this position, it would certainly be, I would say, a betrayal of trust if, say, someone who signed it on behalf thinking that they were running for one position was only to discover that, in fact, they were just running for another position and that signature was invalid. So I would say that we would not accept that. If a candidate in the middle of the process feels that, oh, you know what, I in fact want to run for another position, they're well within their rights to do so within the time frame. They would simply have to come to the elections office and we would cross out what they've initially run for and add a new entry so that they could pull papers and start the process over again for a new position. But we would not authorize them running for multiple positions at the same time.
And in theory, same thing if somebody decided I'm gonna run in district and then all of a sudden they said, hey, I think I'm better off overall for the city, they'd have to come in and change out their papers if they chose to run for a district but decided to run for the overall seat, they'd have to come back in and change paperwork.
That's correct. If they feel during the process of gathering signatures that they'd rather run at large instead of district, and they're within the period authorized in which they can gather signatures, that's their prerogative. If they do so, they have to come to the elections office, though, and change it and clear it with us, just so it's clear and there's no confusion on that point.
Thank you.
And again, just in terms of the timeline, so papers were released on June 1st. The last day in which you can submit signatures to the elections office is August 3rd at 5 o'clock. After August 3rd at 5 o'clock, we will not be accepting any further signatures from potential candidates. So please keep that in mind. So in addition to the statements of candidate, the nomination papers, and we include 6 copies in here. Candidates, if they wish, can make additional copies. It's legal-sized, double-sided. Additionally, they can come to the elections office and we'd be happy to give them additional forms if they so wish. Also included in the nomination paper packet is we've included some educational materials for candidates. So the first one is a guide to the election changes. Again, this is a brief summary to all candidates indicating what the electoral changes are in 2021 and what they can run for, and it includes 2 colored maps. We also included a frequently asked questions guide to the nomination paper process, and I've provided some examples of it to the councilors here as well. This guide was sort of created by me to address some common issues we've seen in the nomination paper process, to give candidates some guidance how best to gather signatures to make sure that they're not rejected. Just some quick advice for the public. Signatures have to be legible. They have to be from registered voters here in the city of Lowell. And we, as the staff reviewing these signatures to certify them and make sure that they're accurate, we have to be able to see that these signatures are legible and that the addresses directly next to them on the line correspond to them. If those conditions aren't met, we will unfortunately have to reject the signature. So candidates who are gathering signatures should keep that in mind. The requirement for all candidates to qualify for the ballot is 150 signatures from registered voters in the city of Lowell. Now, this is a requirement across the board for all candidates. It doesn't matter if you're running at large, it doesn't matter if you're running for district, it doesn't matter if you're running for city council or school committee. It's the same requirement for all candidates, 150 signatures from registered voters of the city of Lowell. We will not accept signatures from voters outside the city of Lowell. Additionally, something to keep in mind too is that those that are gathering signatures, when we check to verify a voter's signature is a registered voter in the city of Lowell, we do it based on how the voter is registered in the system. So one common issue we've had is that, for instance, I'll use the example John Smith. Let's say there are 3 John Smiths living at an address. John Smith Jr., John Smith Sr., John Smith I. On the nomination papers, though, for a candidate, they signed John Smith, all 3 of them. When we review the signatures, unfortunately for the elections office, we can't differentiate which John Smith is which. So as a result, that will be a rejection of all 3. So that's why in our FAQ, we sort of mention this so that people who are gathering signatures are made aware that they have to make sure that what they're signing for is who they're signing for. Another example would be if, let's say, John Smith and his wife sign the nomination papers, and the wife signs it as Mrs. John Smith. Well, that's not how they're registered to vote, so unfortunately that will be a rejection. So again, the FAQ has some very helpful guidance on gathering signatures, so we recommend that all candidates review it prior to gathering signatures. Additionally, in the packet, we include a copy of the election calendar for this year, 2021, that has some important dates, again, including the date when they have to provide the signatures. Again, that's August 3rd. We also have dates when you can post the list of candidates, as well as the last day and hour in which candidates can file withdrawals or candidates can be challenged prior to the preliminary election, as well as the last dates in which people can register to vote prior to an election. So it's all there in the calendar.
Councilor Mercia?
Let's just say that John Smith wrote his name 123 Main Street, and the wife says Joan Smith, and she went italics. Do they not count her now?
I'd have to look at the state guidance. I believe the guidance says no, that would not be counted, because even though there's italics, it's not confirmed that that's the address the voter says. Again, I would strongly recommend that any person who signs the sheet just provide the address next to it where they're registered to vote.
The reason I say that is because it happened to me.
Yeah.
And they did not count that woman, the wife, because she put a
Right. And part of the problem is that, again, we as election staff, we have to certify, we have to make sure that these signatures are who they say they are. And in the event that there's any ambiguity, again, like you can't read a signature, it's illegible, or the address isn't there, or there's a blank space, we have to reject it, because we cannot confirm the voter is who they say they are. Finally, we also include in each nomination paper packet a handout from the Massachusetts Office of Campaign and Political Finance regarding the obligations that all candidates have to follow in terms of campaign finance. Additionally, in the nomination paper packet, we've also included a CD-ROM. This CD-ROM contains electronic versions of many of the documents that you have in paper format, the colored maps and things like that. We've also included a registered voter list as of May 20th, 2021. And what we've done with this registered voter list is that it's a complete voter list of the City of Lowell as of May 20th, 2021 that has been coded to reflect the municipal districts in which these voters are in. As the council is aware, part of the issue with this year's municipal election is that certain wards and precincts in the City of Lowell are divided between 2 or more of these new municipal districts. So as a result, we in city staff have had to go into the registered voter list and essentially code these voters based on which municipal district they're in. And this is the voter list that we'll be using for the municipal elections this year. So given that registered voter lists are a common request, we thought it appropriate, especially in light of the municipal elections of the year, to include a complimentary copy of the current voter list as of May 20th, along with these municipal districting codes to make it easier for candidates that are running to reach out to voters. We've also included a list of streets along with the municipal districts in which they may reside. That can be found on the Your Lowell, Your Votes website. But again, we recommend that candidates review the voter lists first and foremost. So that's the nomination paper packet. And again, any candidate who needs additional materials or extra copies, we recommend that they reach out to us in the elections office. We'd be happy to provide additional copies. And again, that's essentially the nomination process for our municipal elections. Again, the last day in which you can submit signatures is August 3rd. And for any candidate that is seeking signatures, our recommendation in the elections office is that you continue to gather signatures until you receive or confirmation from the elections office that you've reached the threshold. Don't assume simply that you've gotten 150 signatures, that you've gotten 150 signatures. Because as I've indicated, certain signatures may be rejected, they may be illegible, and other standards. The standard of review for us in terms of signatures is that we certify 150 signatures, the threshold required, plus an additional 20%, in this case 30 more signatures, to ensure and guarantee that the the candidate qualifies to a ballot. So again, our recommendation is that any candidate interested in running, get as many signatures as you can, and feel free to reach out to us in the elections office. We can give you a current count as to where you stand in terms of your signatures prior to August 3rd.
Guys, Elliott?
I don't have any questions. I think this is helpful. I think the timing of this meeting called by the chair is important as we see 36 candidates and growing, taking out papers. I think you've answered all the questions for those individuals seeking to run for office. I guess, what is the next step we're informing the candidates, what is the next step? And I don't know if this is not on the agenda or not, but I know I spoke to the council meeting, to inform the voters on the change, because there's much discussion that has taken place, at least in this chamber and outside. I know there's been outreach meetings. People just are not familiar with what the process is.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm jumping the gun and this is a discussion for another meeting, then that's fine too. I think the motion was probably, was it just, Mayor Lee, was it just specific to?
We have the election commissioner here, so feel free to take questions.
What is, I guess, just what, and what is the plan?
Certainly. The election office is working with other city departments to prepare outreach for voters here in the city of Lowell. We're looking at preparing guides in both English, Spanish, and Khmer, advising them about the new electoral changes. Additionally, we will be sending out notice to registered voters in the city about polling locations for these new municipal districts.
Great.
One, that's a requirement under state law. And as indicated, we are fortunate in that all of our current polling locations, we have at least one polling location within each of the new municipal districts. So that allows for a centralized location where voters can go to in their district and vote. So that will make it easier for us, and we will certainly be sending out notice to voters about the new electoral system for our city, as well as these polling locations.
I think it'll be important, Attorney Veloso, because there's going to be one polling location per district, and my concern to you was, okay, what about District 4 that goes from the Dracut line all the way to back Central? Can we have more than one? And the answer is no, for this reason. As you explained to me, I'm not taking credit, but there's only one polling location to prevent someone to go vote, say, at the northerly section of District 4 at a polling location, and then being able to go somewhere else, another polling location, and vote again. So I think that's important for people to know as we send information out, maybe and specifically for that district, or maybe even in other districts that are very large and is not a central location. I think you mentioned pretty much all the districts, with the exception of 4. That's long. I think that's important for people to know. There's going to be one location to prevent. It's a security measure or fraud measure. So I just wanted to, let people know that as you come close, when you find your polling locations, maybe it's going to be a little bit further than it has been in the past, but at least that's the measure that's going to be put in place.
Yes, and when we finalize these plans, we will certainly educate and inform the public as best we can in terms of public notice and things like that. And we are actively working to make sure that we keep our voting experience as efficient and streamlined as possible, given these new circumstances with our voters.
Thank you,
So,
thank you, Mr. Chair.
We are working on that.
Great.
Um,
Yep, up for Mayor Leahy.
Could you just tell us, how's it going to look for, they're going to be preliminaries, so for at-large, is it going to be double plus one, and then there's a primary in September, and then how does it work for districts? So are we going to have some primaries and not some,
Certainly.
how's that going to work?
So for what triggers a preliminary election still remains the same. So it's double the number of candidates plus one in terms of receiving nominations. So that will apply for every position, whether it's at large or district-based. So given for districts, there's only one candidate that can win in an election, the double plus one would be 3. So if you get 3 or more people running or submitting papers to run for a district, that would trigger a preliminary election in that district only.
And it whittles it to what? To 2 or to 1 person?
It would, right. The results of that election would bring it down, I believe, to 2. So, for at-large elections, it's the same requirement. So for city council, it's 3 seats that would be at-large. So again, it's double plus 1. If we receive nominations for 7, that would trigger a preliminary election at large. So at that point, everyone in the city would be voting to determine who would be on the ballot for city council at large. At this point, it's too early to speculate as to what races may have a preliminary election, but you could theoretically run into a situation where your at-large candidates don't reach the threshold to trigger a preliminary, but your districts do. So in that case, for the preliminary election, you would just have district races in certain districts to lower the number of candidates down to that which can be on the ballot for November.
So to Council Elliott's point earlier about the one voting location per district, how does that work with the school committee when they're combined, when 2 districts are in one?
Well, because in the case of school committee, it's 2 city council districts combined into one, you would just vote in your typical city council district, and then we would also include the school committee race on the ballot. Each district will have its own ballot. So, for instance, districts 1 through 8 for city council, they would each have their own ballot. And for the school committee race, you would just simply have that same race in the districts that are in that school committee race. So, for instance, I indicated that one of the school committee seats was districts 1 and 8. So, theoretically, let's say it's November. So, when you look at the ballot, you'll see the at-large races as well as the district races for city council for District 1 and District 8. And then for school committee, you would also see the school committee races be the same for the district level for both 1 and 8. So you wouldn't have to go to a different polling location. You would just go to the polling location for your district, and you would just simply vote on all those races there.
Okay, and I'll give you, just based on the paperwork that's already been filed, you could have a preliminary in a school committee race and not have one in a city council race. But if you lived in District 1, you'd go to whatever location in Pawtuckaville, and if you lived in 8, you would go to that location in the Highlands. So if you're voting for a school committee race, you can't, if you live on Stevens Street, you can't go to Varnum Ave as a location to vote. That
Right.
makes sense?
If theoretically you had a situation where you didn't have city council or races, but you had that school committee race, then you would still hold the elections in Districts 1 and District 8. So those voters who live in District 1 would go to their District 1 polling location. Those in District 8 would go to their District 8 polling location, and they would all vote on the same race, which is school committee for the person who represents them for both 1 and 8. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you very much. Yep, great. Councilman Chow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you for the presentation and the very detailed information you put in the package. And you took the time to really explain what's going on, what's needed when each candidate went there to pick up the nomination papers. I have a question along the same line. I know it's confusing in every aspect, but I guess one of the things that's going to be confusing for the voters, they not be able to navigate through the ballot on the voting day, because it's going to look a lot different than what they're used to. And especially when there's a lot of people in our city where they have limited English language or reading level and so forth. Are you planning to maybe have some kind of a sample ballot beforehand as part of the educational process? Put that out so that way people can know where the at-large candidates' voting boxes are, where the districts are. Something similar to what you did in previous elections.
Yes, Counselor, there will be sample ballots once a final candidate list is prepared. It's a similar process just like in previous elections, both local, state, and federal. Usually prior to the election, we have what are known as specimen or sample ballots, and those will be placed on the city's website and can be advertised through other channels. And our ballots will remain trilingual, English, Spanish, and Khmer, so that voters can read that, and we will also, again, also code our automark machines so that they can also process English, Spanish, and Khmer ballots. But yes, we will be providing sample ballots both prior to the preliminary election and prior to the November election. And those ballots will be provided for each of the districts, so that depending on the district you vote in, you'll be able to examine your ballot and see what you're voting for, depending on what elections trigger for the preliminary election.
Wonderful, thank you.
Great, Elliot, thank you very much. A lot of information today. And just quickly before we wrap it up, I want to give you the contact information for the office in case anybody has any general questions, a phone number or an email address, and then we can wrap it up.
Certainly, yeah. The elections office contact information is available on the city website. Our phone number is 978-674-4046. And our email address is elections@lolama.gov. Again, if any members of the public or any potential candidates wish to gain any information or have any questions, feel free to contact our office. So.
Great job as usual. Thank you very much. Any other questions from anybody? No? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
So moved. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good job.
Councilman.